Go inside the Crimson Tide with your hosts Rodney Orr and Gary Harris, keeping you informed on everything Alabama. Tider Insider TV, brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports.
And hello again, everybody, and welcome into another edition of Tider Insider TV, presented by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports. I'm Gary Harris. Rodney Orr still not 100% tonight, but he is going to join us on the telephone here in just a minute. So we will hear from Rodney on the program tonight, even though he is not with us here in studio. Now, this is the second week that Alabama is searching for an offensive and defensive coordinator. And Washington OC Ryan Grubb was reportedly in Tuscaloosa, flying in on Sunday with his wife and interviewing on Monday for the vacant OC job. It was reported today that a decision was made by Grubb not to take the position. He reportedly had an offer, that's reportedly now, in his very first season as the OC for the Huskies. They were first in the country in passing offense, second in total offense, and seventh in scoring offense. He did a heck of a job. Washington anteed up, too. They gave him a pay raise to $2 million after Texas A&M head coach Jimbo Fisher was reportedly interested in seeking his services. He becomes the highest paid assistant in University of Washington football history. Before time at Washington, he spent 5 years at Fresno State. For 2 years there, he was the offensive line coach and run game coordinator before being promoted to offensive coordinator during the 2019 season. So Ryan Grubb is out. And now let me welcome in Rodney Orr from TiderInsider.com on the telephone. Rodney, let's start with this offensive coordinator search. First of all, hello, Rod. You feeling better?
Well, I'm getting there, Gary. I certainly am. I appreciate your asking.
Absolutely. Glad you could be with us tonight on the phone. We appreciate it. Let's start with this offensive coordinator search and Ryan Grubb. And I always am very, very cognizant of saying reportedly, because if I don't know for sure, I like to make sure that I'm attributing that to someone else, because I wasn't in those meetings, but Ryan Grubb reportedly had an offer. Now, what I find interesting, Rod, and I want to get your reaction, is that he's already making $2 million a year. He reportedly wanted much more than that to take the Alabama job. He's already making a lot of money. It just feels weird to me that if he's making that kind of money, you knew he was going to want more. Yet he flew in here and met. I just think that sounds to me like that's something they could have handled in the phone. If he was going to want a significant raise, and you knew that going in, and you weren't going to meet his demands, I guess you still meet in person. What's your read and your take on all that?
You know what? First of all, I think he's obviously a great coach, done a tremendous job. He took them in 1 year from number 72 in the country in pass offense to number 1 in the country, put up some huge numbers, over 500 yards a game. I think he increased their scoring by nearly 20 points a game. He did a fantastic job. There's no question about what he did there. He's a guy that's he's a hot commodity. Texas A&M made a run at him here last month. So, you know what, Gary, here's the thing. I think Nick Saban is interviewing a lot of guys, a lot of candidates. He has got a lot of guys on his list. I don't think Ryan Grubb's the only one. I think he's the name that got out there. I spoke to someone this evening and who's been around a lot of these searches, a lot of these Alabama searches. He said, listen, I'd be very surprised if Coach Saban extended an offer that quickly to a guy from the University of Washington, no previous connections, doesn't have a real connection down here in the Southeast. But he's a guy that you certainly bring in. You want to familiarize yourself with him. And he made this point, too. He said, look, Nick Saban's one of the most thorough coaches in the country when it comes to evaluating players, evaluating coaches, making these kinds of hires, and that, he felt like that it's just the process. It's part of the process. He felt like that, Nick Saban just wanted to better familiarize himself with Ryan Grubb.
Rodney, with Grubb out of the picture, whether he was formally made an offer or not, it really doesn't matter now. He's not going to be the offensive coordinator at Alabama. And I know we keep hearing some of these names over and over, but where does Alabama stand with this OC search right now? And who are some guys that you say keep an eye on?
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great question, Gary. I think he's probably spoken to 4 or 5 guys already. Not really sure who they are. Just that's the feedback I've gotten. But this is Nick Saban. He's always difficult to track in these these hiring situations with offensive defense coordinators. We've seen it through the years. He surprised us many times. Surprised us with Jim McElwain. Surprised us with Doug Nussmeier. Surprised us even with Lane Kiffin. Surprised us with Brian Dable. Yeah. So this is really kind of a trend for him. Again, he's got his ace in the hole somewhere. Whether it's somebody we're aware of or not, I don't really know, but you've heard the names. I mean, you've gone through the list: Jeff Levy, Joe Brady, Greg Roman, Kevin Johns at Duke. All of those names have come up. But again, who is at the top of his list? Who are the top 2 or 3? We just don't know.
All right, we don't, and we're trying to track it like everyone else is that covers Alabama. Let's move on to the defensive coordinator, Nick Saban, reportedly reaching out to former Tennessee head coach and former Alabama DC Jeremy Pruitt. Jeremy Pruitt, we are told, has talked with Saban about the job. He is a great football coach on the defensive side of the ball. We know that, but there's a but here because of his situation with the NCAA, a possible pending show cause, 18 level 1 violations allegedly committed while he was the head coach at Tennessee. We don't know, Rodney, quite honestly, if he's going to wind up being here or not. We know this. We know he's a terrific defensive football coach. We know he understands how to work for Coach Saban. We know he would do a good job. But, Rodney, the question is, because of all of these potential show calls and all the sanctions that Tennessee was alleged to have committed, if he is hireable right now for the defensive coordinator, and if not, is there a chance maybe he could wind up on the staff possibly as an analyst? What do you know on Jeremy Pruitt?
No, I think you summarized it really well, Gary. I mean, we just don't know if he's hireable in terms of being the DC right now. I mean, because there's so many questions. This thing could drag out a year. I mean, when you're talking about the appeals process, because, Gary, he doesn't even go before the NCAA until, March or April. They may not give him an answer until the summer. He might appeal it. It could go to January of next year before you really kind of have an idea what Jeremy Pruitt's looking at. It's unfortunate because there's no question, in my opinion, he's certainly the best defensive coordinator, I think, candidate for Alabama. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I think Jeremy Pruitt's probably the best defense coordinator in the country. That's just my opinion. So it's an unfortunate situation right now. The timing is not good for Jeremy Pruitt and for Alabama. Could it possibly be that Nick Saban hired him in an analyst role or some other role that off the field? Yeah, I guess it is certainly possible. And look, I'm not going to sit here and tell you 100% that Nick Saban wouldn't pull the trigger and hire him as the defensive coordinator. I don't think that's going to happen. But again, I can't sit here and say with 100% certainty.
Yeah, we'll just continue to follow it. All right, let's talk about some other candidates and a guy who he doesn't exactly raise the applause meter. We know that. But Todd Grantham is already on staff at Alabama in an analyst role, Rodney. And, again, a lot of people are critical. Now, listen, social media just gives everybody a voice. And if you listen to some of these people, you think he couldn't coach little, Pop Warner football. But this is a guy who has got an impressive resume. He's been a defensive coordinator in the NFL, a defensive line coach in the NFL, defensive coordinator at Mississippi State, Florida, Louisville, defensive line coach for Nick Saban at Michigan State. So I'm telling you, Rodney, this is my opinion. I want to get yours. I think he's a heck of a lot better football coach than people are giving him credit for. He's worked for Coach Saban. He understands the system after being here for a year. I think he's a viable candidate, and I think you could do worse. Your reaction?
No, I think you're right. I really do. I think that, obviously Todd Grantham has the one thing that not many coaches have, and it's very important in this hire. Nick Saban needs someone who is familiar with his system, familiar with his style of defense, the way they do things. I think that's the one important ingredient that Todd Grantham has. He has a lot of experience with Nick Saban. And again, people can have their opinions. I certainly understand. He's had some ups and downs as defense coordinator, but a lot of that has to do sometimes with the talent you're coaching, the position that you're in with those particular teams. It's a totally different situation here. But listen, if it's Todd Grantham, we know this. He's got a familiarity with Nick Saban's system. He's a guy that you could plug and play. I mean, he automatically goes into spring practice knowing how things are done. So there's a lot of good things about, Todd Grantham if that's the guy. But again, we'll see how that unfolds.
We will. We know this, too. He is an intense individual, and like you said, his experience with Coach Saban could be a big, check in the advantage column for him. We'll keep you up to date, of course, on this defensive coordinator search. Now to the NFL. Demeco Ryans is officially headed back to Houston. The Texans announcing today that they've hired the former Texans linebacker, Pro Bowler, Rookie of the Year, and, of course, spent some time with the Eagles as well. He's been the defensive coordinator at San Francisco for the 49ers, where he had the conference's and league's best defense this past season there with the 49ers. Of course, the former Bama All-American was a second-round draft pick by the Texans out of Alabama in 2006. As I said, spent 6 seasons in Houston. He met his wife there, Jamila, who's from that area. And let me bring Rodney back in. And interesting on Demeco. You and I covered him at Alabama and really watched him in high school. And I remember us talking on the phone. I remember telling you, I said, there's this linebacker at Jess Lanier. Rodney, man, he's a tackling machine. You said, I already know about him. And you actually talked to Coach Fran because Alabama had a bad scouting report on him. They had him at like 5'11" and 190 pounds, and he was like 6'1" or 2 and like 215 or 220. Once they took a good look at him in person, they made an offer right away. He didn't have many offers, but kind of pick up that story, how he wound up at Alabama and went on to become one of the best football players, one of the best linebackers Alabama's ever had.
Well, I saw him make 27 tackles against Hillcrest High School one night. I was like, number 32 needs to be playing for Alabama. And, again, you kind of laid it out there, and Alabama had the wrong size on him. They brought him in that weekend and made him an offer. And, look, this guy is a winner. You can't slice it any way other than him being a winner, Gary. And everything he does. I mean, when he was 17 years old coming out of high school, you could see future stardom. And I'm not talking about as a football player. This guy's a 4.0 student. He was an engineer, got an engineering degree. I mean, Demeco Ryans is first class. And the defense that he put on the field, I thought Sunday in that game, and they lost 31-7 in that playoff game, but I thought that was one of the most impressive prepared defenses I had seen. I think Demeco Ryans going to do a fantastic job.
Yeah, they did a great job on Jalen Hurts and that read option and also, just keeping him contained. And you're right, had they had any offense after Purdy went down in the quarterback situation, they might have had a chance to win that game. I'm with you. Class act. So glad he's got this opportunity. Turned down, reportedly, according to Ian Rappaport from the NFL Network, a chance to coach the Broncos, who wound up going with Sean Payton. So good for Demeco. Well, Rodney, we appreciate you joining us, man, and hopefully next week you'll be back in studio with us.
I look forward to it, Gary. Take care.
Thanks. All right, we'll have more TITV coming up. We're going to get into some basketball. Alabama coming off a beatdown at the hands of Oklahoma in the Big 12 SEC Challenge. They'll be looking to bounce back tonight in the SEC at home against Vanderbilt. We'll have it for you coming up next. It's basketball. It happens, but it's still disappointing when it does. Second-ranked Alabama went into Norman on Saturday in the Big 12 SEC Challenge and got destroyed. Give you an idea how it went. Oklahoma shot better from the three-point line than Alabama did from the free-throw line. Oklahoma 9 of 13 from behind the arc. They weren't really known as a big three-point shooting team. They were a desperate team. They needed this win. They got it. 93-69. Clearly Alabama's poorest performance of the season, as quite frankly, they just were never really competitive in the game. And welcome back to Tider Insider TV. I'm Gary Harris. Rodney Orr, my co-host, of course, able to join us in the first segment on the phone, but still not quite 100%, a little bit under the weather. Hopefully he'll be back with us next week. But we are going to talk Bama basketball. As I just kind of laid out to you, it wasn't pretty on Saturday, but Alabama will look to bounce back tonight because this is a conference game. And you know what? That's disappointing to lose to Oklahoma, but Alabama's still 8-0 in the league. And they'll be facing Vanderbilt for the second time. Alabama just went up there a couple weeks ago in Nashville against the Commodores, but still, this Vanderbilt team is capable. And if Alabama plays the way it has the last 2 weeks, remember they struggled against Mississippi State last week at home before going to Oklahoma and taking that loss, they could be in trouble tonight. But still, Alabama, if it plays well, and maybe that was a wake-up call. You hate to get beat that badly, but sometimes that's what it takes. And you know what? I think they're going to bounce back tonight. And what's most important is remaining unbeaten in the SEC. Now, this team, when you get beat, you get exposed. That's just the way it works. And we saw this in the loss to UConn. And not as much against Gonzaga where they just got outscored. But and we saw it against Mississippi State a little bit. If you're physical, you push Alabama around a little bit, sometimes they don't respond. They're going to see more of that. They're going to see more teams get up in their grill, try to get physical with them, trying to keep them out of their offensive rhythm. So tonight is a huge game, and we will have highlights for you tonight coming up on WVUA 23 News at 10. Now it's time for Coach Talk. When Nate Oates addressed the media on Monday, his emphasis was on one thing, and that was his team's effort or lack thereof against Oklahoma and getting back to playing the trademark blue-collar basketball that Alabama has become known for.
Effort starts with our effort. It's got to be max effort on every play. It starts with losing yourself in the game, not being concerned with whether you make or miss shots. To be a lot more concerned with how hard you're playing, how blue collar you are. How are we shutting the other team down?
And the Alabama women's basketball team had a huge road win last week at Arkansas. Hannah Barber's three-pointer with a little over 8 seconds to go was the difference. Bama wins at 69-66. Huge win for Alabama on the road. And on Sunday, they battled against top-ranked South Carolina at home. This was a very competitive game. Now, Alabama loses 65-52. But they held USC to its third lowest point total of the season. Alabama still having a really good year, 16-6 overall, 5-4 in the SEC. The Tide travels to Columbia to play Missouri on Saturday. Well, we've got more TITV coming up, and we're going to get to your phone calls, your emails, and your tweets. There's the phone number. Let us hear from you. It's Gary Harris solo tonight, but I'll take your calls and try to answer your questions and listen to your comments at 205-348-WVUA. That's 348-9882. Or you can email us, TITV@WVUA23.com. We'll be right back with the only show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide, the award-winning Tider Insider TV. I'm Gary Harris. Welcome back into Tider Insider Television, presented by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports. Let's head to the phone lines. And first up tonight, our good pal Sammy up in Walker County. What's going on, Sammy?
Hello, Gary. Glad to hear from Rodney right there. Hope he continues getting better. And, the recruits, Gary, I was just, I know we number one in the nation, but if we get Peter Woods and that Kobe Collins, he's going to Florida. What high of a ceiling can we get close to that Texas A&M class? Also, I'd like to mention this, Gary, that, Ryan Williams won the Mr. Football, but that other kid, that 8th grader over at Thompson High, I know you're aware of him. He was just incredible.
Yeah, Ryan Williams, the first sophomore in the 41-year history of the Mr. Football Award in Alabama to win Mr. Football. He still got 2 years of high school, committed to Alabama. Dad played at Auburn. Believe me, Alabama's going to have to continue to recruit him all the way up until signing day in 2 years. The quarterback at Thompson High School, an 8th grader, led them to the 7A state championship. He's already on the radar of all these schools in the Southeastern Conference. And you're right. Alabama would have liked to have had Peter Woods, the defensive lineman from Thompson, and went to Clemson, and Kelby Collins, the defensive lineman from Gardendale, that went to Florida. But look at the guys they did get. I understand. I would like those two guys to sign with Alabama as well. But Alabama's class number one in the country. You can't get any higher than that, and it goes down already as one of the top classes statistically on paper in the history of college football recruiting. So I think Alabama's doing all right. Although you're right, 2 in-state defensive linemen like that, you'd always like to have added them to the class. All right, let's get to our email question, and it's the email question of the day. It's brought to you by KDM Service Corporation, serving your family like our family. For all your heating and air conditioning needs, it's KDM Service Corporation. Here's our email of the day, and it is from Jamie in Haleyville. It is, has Alabama men's basketball ever been a number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament? Jamie, the answer is no. Alabama has not ever been a number 1 seed. I know that they have been a number 2 seed on 3 different occasions. In 1987, that was the team with Wimp Sanderson coaching, obviously, Derek McKee, Michael Ansley, Jim Farmer, Mark Gottfried, Terry Connor. That was a really, really good basketball team that year. They made it to the round of 16 and got upset by Rick Pitino's Providence team up in Louisville. In 2002, Mark Gottfried's SEC championship team was a number 2 seed. And that year, the Tide got knocked off in the round of 32 by Kent State. That was led by a great power forward named Antonio Gates, who went on to be an all-pro NFL tight end. And, of course, that team had Mo Williams, it had Rod Grizzard, it had Irwin Dudley, it had Kenny Wilkins. And then 2 years ago, 2021, Alabama was a number 2 seed and made it to the round of 16. All right, thanks for the phone calls and emails. We'll be back with more right after this. And welcome back to TITV. I'm Gary Harris. We're getting short on time, but we're going to squeeze in one more phone call with Corey over in Trussville. Hey, Corey.
Hey, Gary. How you doing?
Doing great, man. How are you?
I'm doing great. Do you think that Alabama softball is being disrespected due to the preseason ranking, the polls that have come out?
Yeah, a little bit. I do. I think what happened last year when they had so much preseason respect and then started 20-0, and then, quite frankly, struggled and didn't make it to a super regional for the first time. And then you have all the transfers, Megan Bloodworth, Dallas Goodnight, Jenna Lord, all getting out of there. Plus, those were freshmen. Then Lexi Kilfoyle, Abby Dorr, veterans that left. And so you've got a great core. We know coming back with Allie Shipman, Ashley Prangy, Bailey Dowling, Jenny Johnson, and, of course, Montana Fouts. But you're bringing in a lot of new players. So this team is a little bit of an unknown. So maybe I shouldn't say disrespected, just not sure. Nobody's sure about what this team is going to look like. And it's going to be up to them to go out and prove what they're all about. And tell you what, I like Murphy in these situations. I like Coach Murphy when he's the underdog a little bit. And I think Alabama will be this year, Corey. Thanks for the phone call there in Trussville. All right, thanks for all the phone calls and emails. We'll be back to wrap up this edition of TITV on a rainy night in Tuscaloosa. We're back after this.
I try to, what you guys say, enjoy the moment, but my joy comes in winning. I never always knew how far we'd come. I never knew how far we'd go. But I never said it couldn't be done.
Jalen Hurts, always a team-first guy. Now his Eagles are in the Super Bowl, where he'll face Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. First time two black quarterbacks have ever started the Super Bowl against each other. Also, Devonta Smith, Landon Dickerson, Josh Jobe for the Eagles, and two assistant coaches, Jeff Stoutland and Joe Panunzio. No connections from the Chiefs to the Super Bowl, so I think most Bama fans are pulling for the Eagles. All right, that's going to do it for TITV. Thanks for watching a replay tonight at 10:30. And, of course, you can catch it anytime at WVUA23.com. For Rodney Orr, who joined us on the phone, I'm Gary Harris. Thanks for watching, everybody. Good night.